Hello everybody and welcome to Car Confections. Today is the day that you've been waiting on. We're finally able to drive this all-new 2023 Hyundai IONIQ 6. There's a lot of cool stuff going on here that we cannot wait to show you, so let's go ahead and dive in. Now in this test drive, we'll be talking about a lot of different things, including our driving dynamics, the range, the horsepower. We'll be getting our signature Car Confections sound level reading, as well as our airball and slam dunk. But before we do that, let's go ahead and start with a hard acceleration. Woo!
Oh yeah.
There's 60.
So, you probably don't need me to explain that we're in the dual motor version. So this is the most powerful IONIQ 6 of the lineup. Pairs the 77.4 kilowatt hour lithium ion battery pack to dual motor all-wheel drive. 320 horsepower, 446 pound-feet of instant torque to power you to 60 about 5 seconds.
Yeah, it's quick.
It is definitely quick.
At the 5-second range, this is not a Tesla Model 3 performance competitor by any means. Hopefully Hyundai will maybe add an IONIQ 6 in later on. That would be super cool. But 5 seconds is definitely enough that the average person, if you get in this, it's going to feel really quick to you, especially with all that electric torque like Drew was mentioning. This is definitely quick enough for the average person. Actually, I'd say it's very quick for the average person.
Yeah, it really gives you that like gut punch feel when you get on it.
Nice.
Yeah, even after you're already well underway, you definitely have plenty of passing power as well.
Now there is also a standard range model that goes 0 to 60 in 9 seconds, but if you want to know all about the nitty-gritty details of each different configuration and powertrain combination, go check out part 1 of our full review of this IONIQ 6, where we go into all those nitty-gritty details. But right in this video, we're going to pretty much focus on the driving dynamics of this new model.
Now we're on a pretty nice and twisty road here, so let's start to talk a little bit about those dynamics. Because of course, you know, you're choosing a sedan over like an IONIQ 5, you're probably going to want a little bit more athleticism, especially if you're comparing to something like a Tesla Model 3 as well. And indeed, you do have that. This feels a lot more buttoned down than the IONIQ 5. As I go through some corners here, you can really feel that the weight sets down low in the chassis. This has a great and low center of gravity. Really feels nice and agile as I go around these corners. You don't have much in the way of body roll, just a little bit. Good grip. Also want to say the steering is quite nice. It's not overly heavy or anything like that, but it is really alive feeling. You turn it just a little bit, you get that immediate response. You don't have any dead area in the center. Definitely heavier, once again, than IONIQ 5.
Yeah, when I was driving it early, I really liked the steering setup. And when you put it into sport mode, it makes it a little bit...
Let's do that.
Yeah, makes it even more agile. It's quick responding.
Yeah, that feels really nice. Now, if we're talking in comparison to the Model 3, of course, we know a lot about the Model 3, having one in the garage. Compared to that, I would say this is a little less sporty, but, and Mason will talk a little bit about that coming up in just a second, I would say the trade-off is that we have a much better ride. This is a lot more compliant and nice when we're out on the highway versus the Model 3.
Yeah, well, let's go ahead and get into that. Just talk about the ride quality. The ride quality, we've been driving this IONIQ 6 for about 2 hours already this morning. And I've been nothing but impressed with how this vehicle rides. Like Drew was mentioning, this does indeed ride quite a bit better than a Model 3. It just soaks up the bumps really well, even more so than what you would expect out of something with 20-inch wheels. I mean, those are really large size for a sedan, and it just it really does a good job. It balances the sporty feel that you kind of like out of an electric sedan, also with the comfort side of things. So if you're just cruising down the highway, you're really going to be impressed with how this vehicle just rides. And the seats, I will give them, are very comfortable. Now, as far as just some general specifications, we're rocking a 53 kilowatt hour battery pack for the standard battery configuration. If you want to go for the long range model, at 77.4 kilowatt hours. And like I kind of alluded to earlier, your maximum range is 361 miles with the long range rear wheel drive and 18-inch wheels. Your minimum range is the standard range rear drive with the 53 kilowatt hour battery pack, and that's going to have 240 miles of range.
Right, that's going to be for your, most price conscious buyer, basically. You're going to have the lowest horsepower and the lowest range. And then, of course, you can maximize that by going for the long range, like Mason was saying, and being able to really, not for, honestly, that much more money, because that would be the next step up the ladder, is going to get you the most range of the entire lineup. And we did want to point out, when it comes to that range number, as far as today on our drive, we've been experiencing a higher number than that. So when we hopped in, the range reported was 309 miles.
On a full charge, which is supposed to be 270 miles for this all-wheel drive long-range battery pack. And it wasn't just making it up either, because we drove all the way to our destination, and we ended up with 270 miles of range left, which is what it was actually rated to be at a maximum charge after driving for 42 miles. So it really is an impressive figure, honestly. I was not expecting that. We're not range testing.
Nice climate, and it is not a full range test by any stretch of the imagination, but this is such an aerodynamic vehicle. You could maybe experience even better than expected range when you're in ideal conditions.
Now, another very important element for an electric vehicle would be your charging. And the IONIQ 6 does have Hyundai's 800-volt architecture, which is really the best in the business currently. It is so... You're going to need to charge because you want to do that again and again and again. But it's really the best in the business. It has a really impressive charge rate. So if you go 350 kilowatt charging, so DC fast charging, you go from 10 to 80% battery capacity in as little as 18 minutes. Really impressive.
That's good for 65 miles in just 5 minutes.
Yeah, and as far as on level 2 charging, so if a lot of you guys, if you're going for an EV, do a level 2 charge in your garage, you can go from 0 to 80% in 6 hours and 55 minutes, which is very good as well. I mean, that's definitely overnight sleep. If you're run it to completely dead, basically, and plug it in, it's going to be fully charged up in the morning on a level 2 charger. I do also want to point out, you do get free 2 years of complimentary Electrify America charging sessions. So that's a nice benefit if you live close to an Electrify America station. You're going to get that for 2 years of ownership with this IONIQ 6 model. And I want to point out that if you go into the Eco Drive mode, there's some really cool stuff going on to maximize your range. So it's not just retarding the throttle to make it slower or whatnot to make it more efficient. It actually will disconnect the all-wheel drive system and run fully on rear drive, which gives you the better range.
Right, just like completely disconnect that front motor, so even if you have the all-wheel drive model, you're just going to be running in rear drive.
And let's go ahead and get a sound level reading going 55. Wow, guys, okay. All right, so we hit a smoother section of the road. So this is, I'd say, very equivalent to the roads we have in Kentucky. We're sitting at 53.1 decibels. That is incredibly quiet, guys. Very impressive sound level reading. Now, it does make sense because this does not have an engine to make any type of noise whatsoever, but that's very impressive. And as far as how that compares on our sound level chart to other EVs, that is one of the quietest EVs we've ever tested. Now, Hyundai says when you go into that Eco Drive mode, it's good for a 6% range increase. And let's go ahead and hop into one of our other Car Confections signature elements, which is our airball and slam dunk. We may be in Arizona, but let's bring our Kentucky element in. Our slam dunk today has just got to be the range the maximum range figure, especially for that price point. Now, we haven't talked about the price just yet, but you can get 361 miles of range in the SE long range model for $45,500. So 361 miles of range for 45 grand. That is a very attractive price point for that much range, and really just that much range in general is hard to come by nowadays.
Now, on the airball side of things, we're going to say just some technology kind of nitpicks. You heard us mention this in the interior, so I won't reiterate too much, but wired Android Auto, wired Apple CarPlay, in an otherwise very high-tech environment that feels outdated. And then we don't have the augmented reality head-up display from the IONIQ 5, which that's a really good head-up display, so we certainly miss it here.
And lastly here, let's go ahead and talk about our pricing. So the IONIQ 6 is going to start at $41,600, which is a very affordable price tag for an EV. It's nearly identical to the starting price of the IONIQ 5, so it's not going to be too much more expensive than that model. You can get the 361-mile IONIQ, which is the longest range one, for $45,500. And then there's a lot of different trim levels and all-wheel drive, rear drive configurations to go through. This particular model that we have with us today is a little over $57,000 as tested.
And that says the limited dual-motor all-wheel drive.
Now, one thing I do want to point out is that even though this is an electric vehicle, as of the current U.S. regulations, this will not qualify for a $7,500 tax rebate due to it being made outside of North America.
Now we're coming up to a stop sign here, and I went ahead and pulled the left-hand paddle a couple times. That brought me into what is called iPedal, which is Hyundai's version of one-pedal drive. So you'll see, if I let off there, I can actually come to a complete stop without pressing the brake pedal. And you have those various modes, so you can change the region on the fly by just pressing that, all the way down to turning it completely off, which is basically just a very traditional feel. So if you prefer just a normal kind of gas-powered feel, you've got that. If you prefer that full one-pedal experience, you've got that as well.
And as far as your warranty is concerned, you'll continue to have Hyundai's signature really good warranty, 5-year 60,000 mile basic, 10-year 100,000 mile powertrain, as well as 3 years and 36,000 miles of complimentary maintenance. So overall, what do we think about this all-new Hyundai IONIQ 6? Well, I have to say, after spending the entire day with it, this is a very impressive new EV. Now, there are a lot of different EVs hitting the market right now, ranging from sedans to SUVs, but this one really mixes value, typical Hyundai value, with a very impressive range figure. And if you opt for a higher end trim level like this, you're also going to get a lot of luxury thrown in as well. So is it a Tesla Model 3 killer? Well, I don't necessarily think it's going to kill the Tesla Model 3, but I do think that it's definitely going to eat into some of its sales, because this certainly has some benefits over that new EV. Now, if you're interested in learning all about the nitty-gritty details of this IONIQ 6, not just the driving dynamics, we do have part 1 of our full review of this vehicle that goes over all the exterior, the interior, the powertrain, as I mentioned earlier. So please go ahead and check that out. And if you're not a subscriber to the channel already, we would really appreciate it if you hit that subscribe button down below. It helps us out. It helps get us invited to events like this where we can drive some of the latest vehicles on the market. If you're already a subscriber, thanks so much for your support, and we'll catch you next time as we sample more of the latest automotive delicacies.